What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 players you can pick up here in week 11 of the fantasy football season. I won't lie to you guys off the rip. It is a little bit of a mediocre week. There's not a ton of talent on the waiver wire, but there's still some names we should be looking at just to put on the back end of our bench and see what happens over the next couple of games. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these waiver wire pickups. All right, now, as I always do, I have a list of players that I think are waiver wire priority adds. These players are above that 50% rostership threshold that we look at. So usually when we're adding the top 10 waiver wire pickups of the week, for me, those players are under 50% rostership, which means they're available in over half of leagues. These players are not, but if they're on your waiver wire, you should be picking them up. It's going to be Sam Darnold, Zach Ertz, Juwan Johnson, Trey Tucker, Troy Franklin, Parker Washington, Alec Pierce, Joe Flacco, Tez Johnson, and Jerry Jeudy. A ton of these players were talked about on previous stash episodes and or waiver episodes last week as well. So make sure if these players are on your waiver wire, you go pick them up here. All right, but with that being said, let's hop into the first guy that I think you should be adding. And for me, that's going to be Tyler Allgeier, running back here for the Atlanta Falcons. This week, plays the Indianapolis Colts, 11 touches, 57 total yards, and 2 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson managers did not want to see that. But this is a player who's now up to 6 total touchdowns this season, and he's by far and away one of the best handcuffs in football. So I think he's a player who we should not leave on waivers coming out of the week. As we're approaching the playoffs, stashing those high-end handcuffs is going to be a priority for a lot of teams. We want the upside on the bench in case the injury bug comes around. So Tyler Allgeier, like I said, one of the best handcuffs in football. And if you're the Bijan Robinson manager, you want to make sure you pick him up as well. So he's my number one add on the waiver wire this week. Now moving on to my second player, it's going to be at the wide receiver position. I think Jayden Higgins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans, is certainly worth adding as well. He's coming off of a win here against the Jacksonville Jaguars where he went 5 for 7 for 42 total yards and a touchdown in this one. He also had the second most snaps on the team at the wide receiver position, and he more than doubled the combined target share of both Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson. So we've been waiting for the rookie wide receivers, both Jalen Noel and Jayden Higgins, to break out here in Houston. It does seem like the target share and the snaps are starting to go in a positive direction for Jayden Higgins, so he's a player I would be picking up and putting on the back end of my bench if I need some wide receiver help. Now I have another handcuff you can add as well if you're looking for some upside. For me, it's going to be Brian Robinson, running back for the San Francisco 49ers. This week gets 9 touches, 45 total yards, and a touchdown in this one. Currently rostered in about 33% of leagues, so he is widely available. I would say in 7 out of 10 leagues, you're looking at him being available here. Obviously, that's just how the math goes, but this is a player who has scored in back-to-back games, and he's led the 49ers in rushing in this game here against the Rams. So I think he's certainly one of those running backs, like I said, league-winning, high-end handcuff type of approach as we're getting to those fantasy football playoffs. So make sure you pick up Brian Robinson. Another player we can add if you're in a super flex league, maybe you're looking for some quarterback streaming options, it's going to be Marcus Mariota for the Washington Commanders. He's currently only rostered in about 28% of leagues, goes 213 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns in this loss against the Detroit Lions here this week, and he does remain a little bit difficult to trust. I think that's just kind of the bucket of player you're looking at when you're looking at streaming options, backup quarterbacks filling in for hurt starters, and the reason why he's a little bit harder to trust is because he's finished with less than 2 passing touchdowns in 4 of his 6 starts so far this year for the Commanders. So I do think this is a player who does possess a little bit of rushing upside. We've seen that happen. And I think this week coming up, he is going to be a very solid streaming option because he plays the Miami Dolphins, who we know have been giving up some points so far this year. So certainly a player if you're, like I said, in a super flex league, maybe you're a 1 QB league, looking for some quarterback help because of injuries or buys or whatever it may be, Marcus Mariota is certainly an option you can look at. I think a tight end we can be adding is going to be Cade Otton here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a player that we've talked about over a couple of weeks now. Obviously, after the Mike Evans injury, he was a player that was on our radar, but he's rostered still in 38% of leagues, so he is widely available. Coming off of a game here against New England where he went 9 catches on 12 targets for 82 yards, didn't get into the end zone, but this is a player who's going to remain heavily involved in this offense as long as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to continue to miss time, and that could be a long time here in 2025. He has 7 or more receptions in 2 of his last 3 games. Obviously, like I said, very involved. Certainly, if you're looking for some tight end help, a player that I would be looking to add here this week. Another player you can add in that bucket of handcuff high-end type of running backs is going to be Blake Corum. He's currently rostered in about 17% of leagues, coming off of a game here where he had 13 touches for 56 total yards, and he has carved out a legitimate role in this offense ever since that bye week for the Los Angeles Rams. So I think he's a player that you're not going to be able to trust him by putting him into your lineup as long as Kyren Williams is healthy, but if he were to ever miss time for personal reasons, injury reasons, whatever it may be for Kyren Williams, Blake Corum is going to be a guy who I think everybody's going to want to try and pick up and put into their starting lineup immediately. So like I said, as we approach these playoffs, look for those league-winning, high-end handcuff type of options. Blake Corum is a player that fits that mold. Now I'm going to go back to the quarterback position again, kind of like Marcus Mariota. If you're looking for a super flex ad, maybe a player to help you because of injuries or buys in one QB, Jacoby Brissett is still a player I think we can pick up and add. He's rostered in only 16% of leagues, and this game this week against the Seattle Seahawks, it got out of hand very, very quickly, but Brissett, he was kind of able to salvage the day a little bit from a fantasy perspective in garbage time here for the Cardinals. I do think next week he should return into lineups again as a QB2 option for those super flex leagues, and for those teams that I said are dealing with quarterbacks and buys, maybe a streaming option, because this is going to be a player that probably is still going to get a pretty long leash, obviously as long as Kyler Murray is on injured reserve. So Jacoby Brissett, you guys asked for this. Everybody who wanted Kyler Murray to be benched, you asked for this. I tried to tell you that last week's Dallas Cowboys matchup was not going to be the norm, and it kind of went right back down to earth here this week against Seattle. So let's move on to another tight end you can add. For me, it's going to be Dalton Schultz, Houston Texans tight end here. Obviously rostered in about 33% of leagues, goes out 7 for 11, 53 total yards, and scores his first receiving touchdown of the season. This was his best game of the season, and he has become a little bit more reliable over the last couple of months of the season. So I do think he's a player that if you're looking for some tight end help, you can go add Dalton Schultz, because he is certainly one of the more reliable targets in this Houston Texans offense at this point in time. Let's go to one more running back. I do think Chris Rodriguez is a player at least who should be on the radar. Rostered in 21% of leagues. He only had 6 touches and 16 total yards for 1 touchdown in this game. And the reason why is he left early. He got banged up. He hurt his shoulder. But I think there was enough narrative coming into this game that he's still a player that I'm just watching. I don't think you have to add him. I do think I would try and stash him if I had the space. Not a must add by any means, but he was named a team captain before this week's game, and there were plenty of rumors about them potentially changing the guard at the running back position, going from JCM to maybe a Chris Rodriguez, maybe a guy like Jeremy McNichols, and that just didn't really happen in this one because, like I said, Chris Rodriguez got banged up. So he's a player I would be looking at putting on the back end of my bench, holding, seeing if he's healthy going into this next week's matchup, because like I said with Marcus Mariota, they play the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have been really bad against the running back position so far this year, so Chris Rodriguez is a player I would be looking to hold on to just in case that is just pushed back one more week because of that injury of him being the team captain, changing the guard, all of that narrative stuff. So maybe it doesn't happen, maybe it does. Still think I'd rather have him on the back end of my bench if I can afford to do so, just in case it does. And now my final ad of this week is going to be Theo Johnson at the tight end position, rostered in about 31% of leagues, 7 for 8 for 75 yards in this game against the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears got kind of lucky in this one, I won't lie to you, because Jackson Dart got knocked out with a concussion, and he was kind of putting belt to ass before that happened here. And then obviously the Chicago Bears came back in this one. Bears fans, sorry, I'm just telling you how it is. At the end of the day though, Theo Johnson, he's a player who's been very involved into this offense over the last couple of weeks. He finished second on the team in receiving yards this week, and he led this team in receptions here in this one. So again, if you're looking for tight end help, there's plenty of options on the waiver wire this week between Theo Johnson, Dalton Schultz, Cade, Otton, and probably plenty of more. So I do think you can look at these guys and probably plug them into your lineups going into next week's matchups. All right, so there you have it. There's 10 plus players you can look at on the waiver wire here as we head into week 11, probably about 20 if you count for the priority ads, if those guys happen to be available in your leagues. As always, if you found something today informative, entertaining, and or actionable, please do me the favor, hit that like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. We're trying to get to 7,500 subscribers by the end of the season, and we can only do that if you guys go and hit that like button and that subscribe button for us. And last but not least, make sure you go join that free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description, helping you guys with those fantasy football teams 24/7, 365. But with all of that being said, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.